And so in the absence of grand strategy, it's not little projects that will make this work. We need big projects. I want to turn to stay in the Black Sea region, but come back to you, János, in one of your areas of expertise. Let's think a little bit about how Turkey relates to this discussion of looking east here from Wroclaw. There are some that are concerned that a sense of ambivalence about Turkey's position in Europe and ambivalence in some European capitals actually is fueling a negative dynamic of ambivalence in Ankara about its view of its desire to be in part of Europe, and that we can get caught in a downward spiral that actually undermines the prospect of integration over the long term. Does that concern, do you share that concern as you look east, that we have ambivalence on both sides, and that ambivalence actually undermines a sense of helping to transform societies, helping to create the institutions that support the free market democracies over the long term?
Well, I think so that the Eastern European issues, the Turkey and the Mediterranean and Southern Mediterranean issues, the Mediterranean policy of the European Union, the policy towards Turkey, and the Eastern Europe policy is connected to each other. It is the European neighborhood policy which try to deal with all the partners, all the external players who are beyond the borders of the European Union. Turkey is one of the most important issues for the European Union in the coming years. So we should find the solution. So for Turkey, so we have negotiations for a long time, and we have opened new chapters, and Turkey is willing to meet the conditions, the requirements. And if that's the main issue, and to answer my colleagues from the Eastern Partnership countries, to meet the requirement of the European Union is not easy. I remember from our history, there's the transformation, so from the Soviet type, socialist, communist type statehood, that's to transform into the European, Western European type system. It was not easy. So that the low harmonization, it was a long process, and it needed the consensus of all the political players, what we had. Many things was questions in Hungary and the different Eastern European countries, but not that, because it was the national goal to meet the requirements and to be a member of the European Union. In the case of Turkey, it's very complicated because to meet all requirements, because of the character and the past of the countries and the social structure of the country and various reasons. And the different Turkish governments are working on it. We hope so they will be successful. And if the European Union is opening a window for the Eastern European countries for the memberships, they should start this long way to prepare their countries, to develop their countries to meet the requirements of the European Union, which is not easy. I think the Eastern Partnership is one important window for that countries to start the preparations. And the instruments which we will open very soon, it's a good chance in the twinning programs or the different programs to change a little bit the character of the different governmental institutions, to introduce new systems. And the most important, it is a good chance to explain from the partner countries, European partner countries, for the Ukrainian or Belarusian and the Moldovan and the other colleagues, what is behind of that. Because they are able to, at a certain way, eliminate the Soviet-type system. So they created something, so what they could. And it was not easy. They achieved a lot of things. But they should start a new step And there is a certain gradualism in the region. And the Eastern Partnership, with the instruments, it will open. So it's a new chance. Of course, so we should deal with the special characters of different countries. So in the European Union, everybody knows that there is a huge difference between Western Ukraine and Azerbaijan, or the different part of Georgia. So of course, so we should find a proper policy in cooperation with the countries, and in coordination among us, because it needs the coordination of the different countries. What we are, so we should have a same message and the same, so the wishes and the same ambitions. And I think that the European Union is able to do that.
Thanks, János. I want to pick back up on the Russia discussion that has permeated a couple of these remarks and come back to Minister Balazs. I was talking before the panel with Iulian, who's just arrived from Sochi, and it made me think a lot about, coming into this panel discussion, how Western policy, as we thought about integration, as we thought about bringing the East into the fold, as this title of the panel implies, it was premised on a dual-track approach. When you thought about it from a NATO perspective, we created a permanent joint council with Russia as a prelude to then the first round of enlargement with Poland, Hungary, the Czech Republic. As we approached the second round, Big Bang enlargement, we preceded that with a new NATO-Russia Council to take that NATO-Russia relationship to a new quality, and we're able to continue with the enlargement process. This sort of blew up at Bucharest, which was designed to have a Bucharest summit that was forward-leaning on countries like Ukraine and Georgia, followed by, on a bilateral basis, a Sochi declaration between President Bush and President Putin. But how do we think about this now? How do we deal with Russia? How does the EU deal with Russia as a counterpost to its Eastern Partnership? Should we be articulating more clarity and a vision of a Russia that could actually be a member of the alliance, that had a qualitatively different relationship with the European Union? And would this open up more possibilities for making more progress in places like Ukraine, Moldova itself? What are your thoughts on the Russia side of the equation, how this relates to this debate?
Well, first of all, I'm convinced that Russia is a very important partner for both the EU and NATO. With NATO, we have got the EU-Russia Council that suspended its activities after the conflict between Russia and Georgia. Fortunately, last year we had a meeting when we could restart the Russia-NATO Council on the island of Corfu, and since then we have more and more progress in that spirit. We have to find the common problems with Russia. There is a lot, quite a lot, the security of the world, the fight against terrorism. These are common concerns for both parts. So we should put the emphasis on what unites us and not on other issues. Then we may have some divergences in our perceptions. For the EU, technically, we have got a chance with having one single high representative for foreign policy. What we badly need is the unity of the member states, because we are very independent member states, all the 27 in the EU, and we like to express our individual views. Now we should try to build a few common denominators between us, and not to overemphasize differences of accents and tones between the national positions. With Russia, we have to find the common areas. We made very many attempts with Russia. We have the 4 domains of cooperation between EU and Russia. I think that in that spirit, what I try to illustrate with the networks and borders and macro regions, we could progress also with Russia, because Russia now is attached to the EU very closely, and I would say Russia likes the EU, because the EU is a zone of welfare, which came first on the very remote Nordic border with Finland, now with the Baltic Sea, and indirectly there are many connections with Russia. So let's try to do it. Of course, it always depends on the stabilization process in Russia itself.
Thanks, Peter.